Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. And the Lord, whom you seek, shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant, whom you delight in. Behold, he shall come, says the Lord of hosts. But who may abide the day of his coming? And who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness.
All right, man. All right. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High God, Yahweh. We do so in the name of His only begotten Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, man. It's your boy AHYLAWAN from the Refiners, man. We got the brother here.
Brother Kashad, man. Lord willing, some brothers get some edification today, man.
Lord willing, man. Lord willing, right? So, the topic at hand, as y'all can see from the title, right, is Passover a sin, right? So we're gonna be getting into this topic, man. What's it called? Like, share, and subscribe, family. Make sure to share this video. You know what I'm saying? Get your notepads out, man, too, man. Get your notepads, get a pencil, a pen, some chalk, whatever you gonna need to write down these verses and go check it out yourself after. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man, let's get to it. We're gonna be getting to it, man. All right. Okay. All right. So without further ado, let's get straight to it, right? So there's a lot of things that are old that keep being brought up every single year, right? So a lot of these new breakdowns, they aren't new breakdowns at all, but have been around for years. But it comes with growing and learning, right? That's our jobs as children of the Most High, so we could do and show others to do as well, right? So or not to do, right? Excuse me. So this time, right? And it's always around this time of year, right? There's always controversies that go around with different doctrines, different just different things in general that people believe in this community, right? But this time the controversy that's been going around lately is keeping the Lord's Passover outside of the land a sin, right? Let's see what the Bible says about it, right? You get
If I could add on to that thing, one thing for sure too with brothers that I've noticed throughout all these years that we've been doing this is brothers bring up these topics during the month of, the week before, the day before. These are things that you guys should be looking at way ahead of time. Don't start worrying about, hey, let's see what has leaven the day before Feast of Unleavened Bread. Let's not stop worrying about, oh, what about this verse about Passover, the month of Passover? Because now you're tripping. Now you got less of a time to actually do your studying. But thankfully, through the Spirit, man, this was brought to us through a brother who had questions on it, right? And the brother AHYLAWAN dove head first into this, man. And Lord willing has a powerful lesson for you brothers, man. So
all praise to the Most High, man. And I did want to say something too, right? I was previously part of another group, right? So about 2 years ago, right after I separated from Sakari, I joined another group, right, which was MFB. And I remember when we were trying to keep the Passover, I remember running towards these verses, and I remember tripping off of it, right? And I went to go ask another brother, which I, you know, go to for answers and stuff, right? And I remember, I remember him not fully going into it, but I was just like, oh, okay, I guess, right? Because I was used to keeping the Passover, right? So I didn't think nothing of it. So when, like the brother said, when another brother, man, shout out Amatazar from Above All Nations, man, when he brought this questions up to me, right, it started making sense, right? So let's read the what made sense, right? Go ahead. Deuteronomy 16 and 5.
yeah, let's just get it right. Yeah. So this is Deuteronomy 16 and 5. Right? It says, thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover, right? One more time. Thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover within any of the gates which the Lord thy God giveth thee.
Right. So it says, thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover within any of thy gates which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Right. We are not, right? But where?
But at the place which the Lord thy God shall choose to place his name in, there thou shalt sacrifice the Passover at even at the going down of the sun, at the season that thou camest forth out of Egypt.
So the scripture just said that we're only allowed to sacrifice the Passover only in the place where the Lord, our God, has put his name, right? That's clear in the text, right? So
in the land.
right? So that's clear. It says that thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover just anywhere, right? But it has to be in the place where the Lord thy God chooses to put his name in. There you shall keep the Passover, right? And this is the verse that is causing a controversy right now, right? These laws in the Torah, right? So according to Torah, you are only allowed to sacrifice in the place where the Lord's name is. That is true, right? That's the only place that we could sacrifice the Lord's Passover. But not only that.
And so, like, oh yeah, I was gonna say before you get to the what we got to, one thing I do want to do, right? Oh, shalom to you, brother. Shalom, sons of thunder. Shalom, my brothers and witnesses. Yahweh's witnesses, right? One thing I did want to say is, when we got this question, right, it's not like we're just like, all right, we're just gonna lean on our own understanding. Of course, we have a lot of brothers that we learned under, have respect for, and we're like, you know what? We were like talking about how, look, the differences of even how we hold Shabbat, the differences of who salvation pertains to, is out the window, and we're just focused on. I want to make sure that the people that we're teaching to get this understanding. So, like how we were saying earlier, bro, like shout out to the brother from No Cap, right? Shout out to the brothers from Genesis who we talked to. Shout out to the brothers from Sakari that we talked to. Yeah, servants of Yahweh. I forget who else.
Above All Nations. Shout out to a bunch of different camps that we talked to.
Elder Zabak.
Yeah, Elder
Priest
Zabak.
Danyala. This isn't
Elders.
LOZ.
Right.
This isn't just something that we're just like, okay, cool, we're just gonna lean on our own stuff. No, we talked to a lot of people about this. And one thing I did want to mention is none of them, and right, of course, shout out to the brothers for leading to help out with us. None of them went into any of the things that AHYLAWAN is gonna go into, right? And that's why I did want to give props to my brother when he was sharing with me what the breakdown was. And I'm like, bro, you know what? This makes complete sense on this, bro. Of course, and one brother who we talked to was just like, bro, much stuff to the brother too, but sometimes you need an actual answer instead of an opinion. One of the brothers told us, well, just keep doing what you were doing before. I feel you, but we have people that are counting on us to give them a solid answer, and that isn't always a solid answer.
Definitely, man. Shout out to House of Bread too, man. Right,
House of Bread, yeah.
The brother was saying, like, we didn't just talk to only people that believe what we believe about this, right? We talked to people with all different types of doctrines, right? And different Sabbaths. People, we're lunar Sabbatarians. We chopped it up with multiple camps that believe Friday to Saturday Sabbath, and just whole different types of doctrines in general. We didn't just stick to ourselves, right, and come up with what made sense to us, right? We're going to bring this to council and talk to everybody about it, right, and come down to a proper consensus of what should be done, and not according to our own knowledge, right, but the general knowledge that the Lord has bestowed upon the different organizations that he's using, right, to wake up our people, right? So, so Deuteronomy 16:5 and through 6 says that we're only allowed to keep the Passover in the place where the Lord our God chooses to place his name, right? That's the only place you can keep the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover. According to Torah, that is completely true, right? But not only that, it's not only that, right? Baba Kashad, get Deuteronomy 16:16.
Khan, this is Deuteronomy 16:16.
Mm-hmm.
3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread,
Mm-hmm.
in the feast of weeks,
Uh-huh.
and in the feast of tabernacles.
Uh-huh.
And they shall not appear before the Lord empty.
Right. So there's 3 other times, right, where the Lord requires us to come. These are the highest holy days that we have to present ourselves in front of the Lord, right? And the thing is, we can't come empty. What is that talking about? That's talking about sacrifices and offerings, right? In the same chapter where it says that you have to come to the land, guess what? It says that if you have to come to the land for all of these holy days right here, including unleavened bread, right, which is the day after Passover, right? Feast of Weeks, which is also called Pentecost, right? And also the Feast of Tabernacles, and Passover. These are the laws that tell us in Deuteronomy 16 that we are supposed to do this in the land, in the place where the Lord puts his name at, right? So if the Lord's Passover is a sin to keep outside of the land, so is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, so is the Feast of Weeks, which is also called Pentecost, and so is Feast of Tabernacles, right? So,
And
go ahead.
even on just that point, this is what kind of was the thing where, and I always ask myself when brothers bring out different doctrines, different breakdowns on something, it's like, bro, we've different camps have been teaching this for hella years, right? Let's just be real, hella years. If you really think that nobody has seen these verses before, and it's still telling people, all right, this year we're going to keep tabernacles, this year we're keeping this, knowing that none of you guys, and this is going out to the brothers, right, that put out this verse, that this whole breakdown that is literally, if brothers are not going to keep Passover this year because of watching your breakdown, you have a lot of self-analyzing to do, because also it's not just Passover, how the brother brought out. You should be telling brothers to not keep Feast of Tabernacles. Why? You're not in Jerusalem. You're not making houses, booths out of the palm trees. You're going to Walmart to buy a tent. You're not doing it how the word says it. Stop telling people to, all right, well, let's keep tabernacles. Let's do this and that. You're literally telling brothers to stop a memorial, to stop doing something that the Lord instructed. And that's the frustrating part about it, bro. Right? So go ahead.
We got to change up your emotion.
Right? So little things, when you make a change, starts to trickle down and make all different types of effects, right? So this just happens to be one of it, right? So if there's some camps, right? There's some individuals, there's some groups that say, okay, we're not going to keep Passover, or we are going to keep Passover, but we're not going to sacrifice the lamb. Or if you're going to keep the Passover, they're not going to keep. I mean, if they're not going to keep Passover, but they're still going to keep unleavened bread and tabernacles, right? When Deuteronomy 16 and 16 literally shows you in that same chapter, all of those things are the same, right? There's differences in those holidays of what you're supposed to do and the criteria of them, but these are the holidays that you have to come in the place where the Lord put his name at, right? So if the Lord's Passover is a sin to keep outside the land, so is Feast of Unleavened Bread, so is Feast of Weeks, so is Feast of Tabernacles, right? So y'all might be asking yourselves, why do camps and why do some individuals keep the Lord's Passover then, if Deuteronomy 16 and 5 and 6 says you could only keep the Lord's Passover in the land, right? Mm-hmm. Or if they don't keep the Lord's Passover, why are they keeping unleavened bread? Why are they keeping Pentecost? Are we sinning by celebrating these holy days in America? Right? That's the question that's going around. It's circulating. Are we sinning because we're keeping these laws? I mean, celebrating these holy days in America, right? Some of you might actually be hearing these verses for the first time, right? So today I'm going to be showing you the laws that we're supposed to be keeping while we're in possession of the land. We're going to be showing you what are sacrifices. We're going to be showing you the times that we stop doing sacrifices and when we're going to resume. We're going to show you when it's okay to sacrifice and when it's not allowed to, right? We're going to be showing you also where the places where the name of the Lord is, right? And we're going to be showing you the high holy days, whether or not it's a sin to celebrate in America. Excuse me. And we're going to be diving into a plethora of different verses, right? From Deuteronomy 12, Leviticus 17. We're going to go into Joshua. We're going to go into Ezra and a bunch of other things today, right? So without a further ado, man, right? The first thing that we're going to be starting at today, right, is the place where the name of the Lord is, right? The sister commented, she says, Shabbat Shalom. The word tells us that we would look for him in the land of our captivity. Baruch 2 and 30. Yup. And Chronicles 6 and 38. Yup. We would be looking towards him in the land of our captivity. That's correct, sis. All right.
And Salaga, and that's such a, even before when all of this started, right? This was something that instantly to me, boom, well, if the whole thing is, and this is obviously you can't blame brothers for and this was the same thing that happened for us when we split off from Sakari. It was okay, now it's up to us to make sure that we're on point with everything. The same thing with the brothers from Above All Nations. They split from BOW.
Yeah.
And then now it's up to them to, I got to make sure I'm on point with everything. Cool. So you run into these verses. There's no problem with that, right? But one thing that you, in the process of trying to reason with everything, you have to bring everything in its totality together, right? So the first thing that I thought of, I'll just read it, right? I'm like, brother, essentially, watch this. If the whole reasoning of why we're not keeping Passover, right? Let me see. 4 and 6. So this is Deuteronomy 4 and 6, right? And shout out to the brothers from the Malachian. I forgot to mention them as well, right? I talked to Bishop Barak about this, right? And it was one of the first things is this is what came to my mind. Deuteronomy 4 and 5. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should do so in the land whither you go to possess it. So if the ideology of keeping Passover outside of the land is a sin, why are you keeping the rest of the laws? Why are you wearing fringes? Why are you not eating pork? You can do whatever you want, apparently, because these laws are specific for when we are in the land to go to possess it, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of points that get overlooked, right? But there are obviously some laws that you do have to keep while you're in the land, and laws that apply everywhere you go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be showing and distinguishing and basically showing examples of those, right? So let's see. Go back to my presentation. Right. So today we're going to be starting at the place of the name of the Lord, right? So the first place where the nation of Israel sacrificed to the Lord after we left Egypt was at the altar at the tabernacle, because that's where the Ark of the Covenant was. In Exodus 25, we received instructions from Yahweh and started to build the Ark of the Covenant and building the tabernacle, right? So Exodus 27 says we built the altar in the tabernacle before the ark where we would go to sacrifice on. It says it looked like a copper table with 4 horns, right? We would bring the high priest would bring those animals and place it on this altar, right? When you go to read these things, Salakia, wait, give me 1 second. Okay. Salakia, right? So when the altar that's inside the tabernacle is like a copper table with 4 horns, right? The high priest would come and put the animals on the altar and slay it before the Lord. And what's it called? It wasn't until Exodus 40, right, until that point where we finished the tabernacle, right? So we carried this altar with us for 40 years while we wandered in the wilderness until we made it out, right? We read this in all the way until Numbers 13, right? So the Ark of the Covenant and the altar and all the things that we would use to sacrifice was built in Exodus 40, right? And from Exodus 40 all the way to Numbers 18, we carried that altar with us everywhere we went, right? We read that when we got out in Numbers 13, right? So we were doing sacrifices everywhere we went. Why? Because we had the altar with us, right? Even before we got to the land of Israel. For an example, the whole congregation of Israel, the whole congregation kept the Passover in Gilgal, right? Gilgal is in the land of Jericho. This was before we even got to the land, right? So I've heard some brothers say that we weren't supposed to keep the Passover in Gilgal, but that's simply not true at all. And I will be emphatically showing you that it was of the Lord, right? If you can get Joshua 5 and 4, Baba Kashan.
Khan, this is that verse in the NASB,
Mm-hmm.
right? It says, This is the reason why Joshua circumcised them all the people who came out of Egypt who were males, all the men of war, died in the wilderness along the way after they came out of Egypt.
Right. So we got to remember the timelines that this is happening, right? So we just came out of Egypt, and we have a lot of people that are not circumcised because they was born in the wilderness, right? So Joshua, the man chosen by the Most High, circumcised all of these men of Israel for what? Right? Go ahead.
Verse 5 in the NASB, right? It says, "For all the people who came out were circumcised, but all the people who were born in the wilderness along the way as they came out of Egypt had not been circumcised."
So there were people that left Egypt with Moses. Those men, right? They were circumcised, but there was a whole generation of people that were born inside the wilderness, right? Those men were not circumcised in the wilderness, right? So why did Joshua circumcise them? Because it's according to the law that we aren't allowed to participate in the Lord's Passover if you are uncircumcised. We read that in Exodus chapter 12, verse 48.
Just get it.
Go
All
ahead.
right, this is Exodus 12 and 48. And when a and when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it, and he shall be as one that is born in the land, for no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof.
All right. So the law specifically tells us that you have to be circumcised to even participate in the Lord's Passover.
And like,
right?
and like Salaki, and just a sidebar, some brothers celebrated Passover last week, right? We are keeping Passover in a couple weeks, right? And for all you brothers that are out there, this is another one of the examples how we were talking. If you saw our live, right? I get it, brothers are trying to the best of their ability, but if you're trying to the best of your ability, don't be a hypocrite, right? Go out there. If you are not circumcised, go get it done. We have a brother who literally through the Spirit just got it done an hour ago. A brother who did it 2 weeks ago, right? And this is the zealousy that you can see from brothers. Stop making these excuses and go get it done and keep the law, right?
Yeah, and just because the Bible says that you're supposed to keep the Lord's Passover in the land, right? The law also says you still got to be circumcised aside from the Passover period, right? So go get that done, right? So going back to Joshua, right? If you give me Joshua chapter 5, verse 9.
Joshua 5 and 9. Then the Lord, in the NASB, right? It says, "Then the Lord said unto Joshua, Today I have rolled away the shame of Egypt from you." So the name of that place is called Gilgal to this day.
Right. And there's a significance about the name of Gilgal, right? That's where the Lord rolled away the shame of Egypt, right? They just literally got circumcised. Their shame got put away from them, right? So this is the significance of Gilgal, right?
And that's literally what the name means. Gilgal, rolled away.
All right. So that shame was taken away from them in order to do what, right? Verse 10.
Verse 10. While the sons of Israel camped at Gilgal, they celebrated the Passover.
They celebrated what?
The Passover on the evening of the 14th day of the month on the desert plains of Jericho.
Where?
In the desert plains of Jericho.
So they kept the Passover on the according time, on the according date, right? And they were circumcised, right? They were keeping it exactly how they were supposed to be, right? So, and this was, mind you, this was before they got to the land, right? The Lord didn't say, "Why are you keeping Passover in Gilgal?" The Lord had them keep the Passover there. This place was deemed a holy place. Give me Joshua 5 and 14.
Like I'm gonna start at 13.
Yeah,
because this is such an important part right here. Right? This is Joshua 5 and 13. And it came to pass when Joshua was by Jericho that he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there stood a man over against him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went unto him and said unto him, Joshua said unto him, "Art thou for us or for our adversaries?" And why I wanted to go there too, he's tripping on this angel. He has a sword and he's asking them, "Are you with us or against us?" Imagine if the angel right here was against what they did. he wouldn't have said what he said next right here.
Right. And if you, yeah. So exactly. I want you to understand the story. And he looked up and saw a man with a sword, and he asked him, are you for us or are you against us? They just kept the Passover, right? It's going to explain who this man is, right? Go ahead.
On Joshua 5:14 in the NASB, it says, and he said, no, rather I have come now as captain of the army of the Lord.
He said, no, I'm not against you. Rather, I come now as a captain of the army of the Lord. This is an angel, the captain of the army of the Lord with a sword in his hand, right? Go ahead.
And through the grapevine, our old understanding from this, which I mean, I would still lean to, we would teach that this was actually Yahushua right here, right? He's the captain of the Lord of hosts, right? And Joshua fell on his face to the ground and bowed down and said to him, what has my Lord to say to his servant?
All right.
And keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
Verse 15, and the captain of the Lord's army said to Joshua, remove your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy.
The Lord just named that place Gilgal because that's where the Lord took the shame out of the place of the land of Israel, where the Lord's Passover was being held. That place is holy. Are you going to disagree with the angel of the Lord? Right? So, if it wasn't sanctioned, right? If it wasn't sanctioned, the angel of the Lord's army would have said right there, y'all messed up, right? Remember, it was the whole congregation of Israel that kept the Passover in Gilgal. It wasn't just one or two people. All the Bible, the Torah says all of Israel has to keep the Passover, right? So what's the punishment according to the Most High if you sacrifice or keep the Passover outside where the name is? I want to see if any of y'all know in the comments. If you keep the Passover outside where the name of the Lord is, what is your punishment according to Torah? Does anybody know?
All right, and just while they put that, to answer your question, Minority 144, when is the evening of the 14th day? As you understand, it's on the 14th day, right? A lot of brothers keep it on the 15th, right? At the start of it, there's only the evening and the morning. There's only evening and morning in the scripture. So when it says the 14th day at even, we keep it at the evening, at the very beginning of the 14th day. So as soon as that sun goes down, that's when we are killing the lamb. That's our understanding.
That's our understanding over here, man. Right. So I didn't see anybody answer the question about what happens, what's the punishment if you keep the sacrifice outside where the Lord's name is, right? But yeah, do you got an answer for me? What's the punishment if you keep the Passover outside of the land where the Lord's name is?
Punishment?
Yeah.
I would say death.
Death, right?
Yeah.
So the Bible says if you sacrifice outside where the name of the Lord's is, you are to be cut off.
Yeah,
It's a sin, right? To be cut off, right? So the sin is if you sacrifice outside of that, right? They sacrifice in Gilgal, right? So if this place wasn't sanctioned, everybody there, including Joshua, would have been cut off, right? So this is important for people to understand, right? So if it were against the law, we never would have conquered the land of Canaan, right? Because what happens when we break the Most High's God's law and we go to battle, right? People need to think about this. We would have been cut off, and the Lord wouldn't have let us win any of the battles that we were about to go into. Why? Because we were sinning. When we're sinning, the Lord doesn't fight on our side. But that's the reason why we were able to sacrifice in Gilgal, because we had the tabernacle with us, with the altars and the priest, etc. Go ahead.
And the precept, right? So like how we said, the Lord would not be with us. This is Joshua, the very next chapter, 6 and 2, right? And the Lord said unto Joshua, right? And just furthermore, right? These scrolls don't have chapters. This is just a couple of sentences after, right? So verse 2, it says, and the Lord, Yahweh, said unto Joshua, see, I have given into thine hand Jericho and the king thereof and the mighty men of valor, right? So if the Lord is not with them, because obviously they had just sinned, according to some brothers that have this understanding, Why is the Lord still on their side?
It doesn't make sense, right? And you're not going to find in the Bible where it says that this was wrong, right? Or it wasn't sanctioned, or it was improper, or they did it out of their own will, right? The Lord literally showed them that they had to keep it there because that's when the time came on the 14th day of the first month, right? That's why they circumcised all the people there that weren't circumcised in Israel, right? And that's why they were able to go after and conquer the land of Canaan, right? So again, the angel of the Lord with a sword in his hand, right, would have, and Joshua let that happen. A man the Most High chose to lead the people, right, to get them into the land of Canaan. So the Lord would have not dealt with the whole congregation of Israel would have been cut off because they sacrificed in a place they weren't supposed to be, right? So the only reason that they were able to sacrifice that there was because we had the altars, the tabernacle, and the priests with us, right? So that Passover was indeed righteous, right? So let's see. Okay, moving on now, right? So now, oh shoot, there you go. All right. So now, once we got to the land, right? Now, once that we got to the land, it took us approximately 5 to 7 years of conquering the land from the Canaanites until we settled and we were allotted the tribes, right? Every piece of land to all the Israelites, right? So when we got to the land, right? When you read these books, once we conquered the land of Israel, we separated and divided the lots, right? Everybody got their own inheritance, right? What was an inheritance? It was actual land, right? So after we separated all the tribes and all the lands, right, we were actually sacrificing and keeping the Passover, right, and doing all those things that we were supposed to do, right? But if you think that we weren't sacrificing the Passover and keeping the law the whole time until we got the temple in Jerusalem, you're sorely mistaken, right? If you could get Joshua 11:23, Baba Kasha.
Oh, this is Joshua 11:23.
Uh-huh.
Right? It says, so Joshua took the whole land according to all that the Lord said unto Moses.
Mm-hmm.
And Joshua gave it for an inheritance unto Israel, according to their divisions by their tribes, and the land rested from war.
Right. So Joshua took the whole land according to what the Lord said unto Moses, right? We got the inheritance, we divided it, everybody got their own land with their own tribes, and we rested from war. Again, if the Lord wouldn't have been with us if we sinned and kept the Passover wrong, it wouldn't have happened, right? But after this point, right? After this point, it's after this point of the laws of the land started to come into effect. Why? Because the law of the land, because the land was finally in our possession, right? Mm-hmm. So now that we got the land from Israel, for Israel, where did the Lord put his name at? Right? He says you could only, Deuteronomy 16:5-6 says you could only keep the do this Passover, right, and all sacrifices where the Lord put his name. So where did the Lord put his name? Right after we just conquered Israel, Joshua divided all the lands and put everybody in their own slots. Where was the name of the Lord in? Was it Jerusalem? Was it in the temple? No. The name of the Lord was in Shiloh, right? The tabernacle rested in Shiloh for hundreds of years. That's where everybody would come to sacrifice, not in Jerusalem, not at the temple, right? Shiloh was located in the lot of Ephraim. It wasn't even in Judah, right? Shiloh was later called Samaria, right? Joshua 18:1, Bible Kasha.
This is Joshua 18:1. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel assembled together at Shiloh and set up the tabernacle of the congregation there. And right. The land was subdued before them.
The whole congregation of Israel would assemble at Shiloh, and this is where the tabernacle of the congregation sat there. It stayed there for hundreds of years. That's where you would bring the sacrifice, the Passover, and all the different things, right? And to answer the brother, Spirit of Judah, Shalom, does this congregation believe that Gentiles can be grafted in the 12 tribes chart? Just curious. If you're referring to heathen Gentiles, no, we don't believe that, brother. Right?
But I will say this: we have no problem if a heathen wants to come and serve the Most High God, right? The Gentiles grafting in, we believe that to be Southern Kingdom that fell away, and also Northern Kingdom, right? We believe in the 12 tribes chart. Might want to go look at either GOCC or Genesis, brother.
Yeah, if you're referencing the heathens, check out the brothers at Genesis or GOCC, brother. But we believe that those Gentiles are Israelites according to the Bible, man. Right. So going back to this, right? So it wasn't, the name of the Lord was not at this point at Jerusalem or at the temple, right? It was at Shiloh, and these are precepts to prove that it was at Shiloh, right? So we're gonna see that the Israelites had to sacrifice the Passover and all different offerings and peace offerings and the vows, all different types of things, right? They had to do that in Shiloh, right? 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 3.
This is 1 Samuel 1 and 3. And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh.
And where?
In Shiloh.
Right, go on.
And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priests of the Lord, were there.
So the priest of the Lord, right? This is where all the sacrifices, the Passovers, all of that, this is where the name of the Lord was, right? Yearly. Why? Because in Deuteronomy 16 and 16, every year the Lord required us to come for Passover, for tabernacles, for feast of first fruits, right? And I feel like I'm missing one, but yeah, right. So these are the holy days that we're supposed to become yearly. It's a yearly pilgrimage that you have to come to where the name of the Lord is, right? We read that in Deuteronomy 12, right? So
that was chapter 1 and 3.
Yeah, this was 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 3, right? So it was there ever since Joshua 18 and 1, right? From that whole time, for hundreds of years, they had to go to Ephraim. They had to go to the northern kingdom of Israel to sacrifice unto Yahweh. It wasn't in Judah, it wasn't in Jerusalem, and it wasn't in the temple, right? And here's a secondary precept to prove that even more, right? Go ahead.
This is Jeremiah 7 and 12.
Right, Jeremiah 7 and 12. Go ahead.
It says, but go ye now unto my place which was in Shiloh.
That was in Shiloh. Go ahead.
Where I set my name at the first, and see what I did to it for the wickedness of my people Israel.
Right. So you may ask yourself, how did it change from Shiloh to Jerusalem? Right. But the Lord stopped dealing with Shiloh, right, and was stopped dealing with the land of Ephraim for their iniquities. This is why King Solomon wanted to build a house unto the Lord. That's where he put his temple, because Shiloh had become obsolete. Now read that again.
Oh, Salakia, Khan.
It's all good.
This is again Jeremiah 7 and 12. It says, but go ye now unto my place, which was in Shiloh.
Shiloh, go ahead.
Where I set my name at the first.
He set his name at first at Shiloh, right? Go ahead.
And see what I did to it for the wickedness of my people Israel.
So because of the wickedness of our people in Israel, he no longer was dealing at Shiloh, and he took his name from it where his name was at first. This is what the Bible says, right? So the Ark of the Covenant was taken from Shiloh to the first temple once it was built. We read that in 1 Kings chapter 8. Solomon has the priests bring it since they were the only ones that could touch the Ark of the Covenant. The only people that could touch the Ark of the Covenant are the high priest, right? Anybody else, right, would drop dead right there. We see that an example of when the Canaanites took the Ark of the Covenant, right? Or the Philistines, right?
Yeah, that's what happened.
And the Ark of the Covenant was about to fall. The dude grabbed it So he had good intentions, right? So it wouldn't touch the ground. As soon as he touched it, he dropped dead and died. Why? Because only one certain people are allowed to touch the Ark of the Covenant, right? So go ahead for 1 Kings 8:3.
This is 1 Kings 8:3. And all the elders of Israel came, and the priests took up the ark. And they brought up the ark of the Lord, and the tabernacle of the congregation, and all the holy vessels that were in the tabernacle, even those did the priests and the Levites bring up.
All right. Go ahead to verse 5.
Verse 5, and King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel that were assembled unto him were with him before the ark, sacrificing sheep and oxen that could not be told nor numbered for multitude.
They were sacrificing before the ark. This validates that because they had the Ark of the Covenant, that they were able to sacrifice. That's the reason why they sacrificed in Gilgal. That's the reason that they were always able to sacrifice wherever they went when they built it in Exodus. Wherever they went, they had the Ark of the Covenant, which contained an altar in the tabernacle, right? That's the reason why you're able to sacrifice, right? And it was the first place of the name of the Lord was at Shiloh, not Jerusalem, not at the temple, right? So there was hundreds of years until the temple was first built. To say that that was the only place that you could keep the Passover is simply not true, right? So this was 1 Kings chapter 8, right, where we see the King Solomon ordering the high priest to carry the Ark of the Covenant and transport it from Shiloh to the temple, right? So what's crazy is just 3 chapters later, we see King Solomon build altars to the god of Moab, which is Chemosh, right? And the god of Ammon, which is Molech, right? Because of the heathen wives that he had, right? And the temple, and we see in 2 Kings, right? King Manasseh put altars to Baal and the altars of Asherah, right? This is because this is what caused the temple to be defiled and ultimately destroyed for the first time, right? If you could get 2 Kings.
This is 2 Kings 25:9. And he burnt the house of the Lord.
So they burnt the house of the Lord, right? The Babylonians are the ones that took the Jews into captivity after the temple fell, right? Go ahead.
I'll just get verse 8 just for
go ahead.
Clarity, right? So verse 8, it says, and the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon,
right,
came Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. And he burnt the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and every great man's house burnt he with fire.
All right. Keep going to verse 10.
Verse 10. And all the army of the Chaldees that were with the captain of the guard break down the walls of Jerusalem round about.
So they destroyed the house of the Lord, which is the temple. They killed they burnt down the king's houses, all the houses in Jerusalem, everybody's house. The whole gates were languished, right? Burnt down into the ground. The gates were black onto the ground, right? Like Jeremiah 14:2 says, right? So these places got all burnt down, including the temple. Why? Because King Solomon wanted to build altars unto the gods inside the King Manasseh built altars of those gods inside the temple and defiled our temple, man. Right? The other king, right, King Solomon, because he had all his wives over there, and they convinced them to commit idolatry, man. Right? Build altars to where they sacrifice the devils, right?
Key word right there, man.
Right. So I'm not going to read the whole story of Ezra with you, right? But there are key points that need to be remembered, right? From the time the first temple was destroyed and the Jews went into captivity, we went through a span of roughly 70 years without a temple. We know this because it says the elders that returned, that finally returned in Ezra, right? They saw the altar, right? They saw that the altar was and the temple was built like turned into ruins, right? And that's where the name of the Lord was, right? So if you could read Ezra 3:2.
This is Ezra 3:2. It says, then stood up Joshua, the son of Jozadak, and his brethren, the priests, and Zerubbabel, the sons of Shethiel, and his brethren, and builded the altar of the God of Israel to offer burnt offerings thereon, as it is written in the law of Moses, the man of God.
Right. So they could have just did that anywhere inside the land of Jerusalem, but they went where the altar and the temple's ruins were. Right. The first thing they did was build an altar and start giving burnt offerings and sacrifices unto the Lord. Right. But the whole temple itself wasn't built until Ezra chapter 6 verse 14, man. Right. If you can.
Come on, this is Ezra 6 and 14. And the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo, and they builded and finished it according to the commandment of the God of Israel, and according to the commandment of Cyrus and Darius and Artaxerxes, king of Persia.
Right. So the temple itself wasn't built until chapter 6 verse 14. Right. What does that prove? That you're able to sacrifice without a temple. I want y'all to understand that they were able to sacrifice without the temple being built. Right. Why? Because all the way in Ezra chapter 3, the altar was built. You need an altar to even sacrifice. Right. But the thing about that is that we didn't even keep the first Lord's Passover until Ezra chapter 6 verse 19. Go ahead.
On Ezra 6 and 19. And the children of the captivity kept the Passover upon the 14th day of the first month.
Right. So y'all let me know if I'm going too fast for y'all, or if you need me to repeat something. Right. This is what we're showing right here, that they didn't even build the whole temple until Ezra chapter 6 verse 14. Right. And they didn't keep the first Lord's Passover until Ezra chapter 6 verse 19. From that time, there hasn't been a Lord's Passover since the last one, right, that they did, right? But even us, there hasn't been a last Passover since the last time that we did it after 70 AD, right? When they destroyed the second.
Repeat that part one more time. Yeah.
So there hasn't been a Lord's Passover since the last one before we had before 70 AD, before the second temple was destroyed, right? And when we build the third temple with the altar in Jerusalem, that will be the next Lord's Passover, and it won't be a lamb. It's going to be a bullock, right? So there was a span between the first temple and the second temple being built in Ezra's, right? The Jews got taken into captivity by the Babylonians, and all this time, so it was a span of roughly 70 years. We know that because there was elders that left in chains to Babylon, and they came back to the city and saw it destroyed when they're old, and they started crying. They said they didn't know if they were either crying because they were happy or because they were sad, right? It's because that they saw the temples and the altars destroyed, right? But when they were little, it was beautiful. They saw it standing. The whole city was marvelous. But when they came back, it was ruined, burnt down to a crisp, right? So it was only one generation that we spent without a temple, right? And during that time, there was no sacrifice. The Lord's Passover did not happen for 70 years while they were in captivity. The very first Passover that they kept was in Ezra 6 and 19, leaving captivity. That's the very first Lord's Passover that they kept, right? So, like I said, the next Lord's Passover that is going to be kept is going to be a bullock, right? And if you could get that.
This is Ezekiel 45 and 21. In the first month, in the 14th day of the month,
right,
which is Passover, ye shall have the Passover, a feast of 7 days. Unleavened bread shall be eaten, and upon that day shall the prince, right, Yahushai, prepare for himself and for all the people of the land a bullock for a sin offering.
right? Verse is that verse 22?
No, that's yeah, that was verse 22.
Con. So we're showing you this that this is future prophecy. This is future connotation, right? This is that Christ. So because Christ was our Passover lamb that was slain, as the scripture says, we're actually going to have to sacrifice a bullock in the new Lord's Passover, right? Once we leave America, which is spiritual Egypt, right? So we had a Passover when we left the last Egypt and we sacrificed the lamb. This time we're leaving spiritual Egypt, which is America, with another exodus, us to the wilderness, with another sacrifice, which is a bullock, right? So that is where we showed where the name of the Lord is. So originally, we were able to sacrifice on the Ark of the Covenant. Why? Because the name of the Lord was there. We were able to sacrifice on that altar, right? And wherever we were carrying that altar through the wilderness, we were sacrificing along the way. We showed that in Gilgal, right? Before we entered into the land. Once we got into the land, the place where the name of the Lord put his name was not Jerusalem. It was not at the temple. It was at Shiloh. It was at Shiloh for hundreds of years until the Lord took his name out of Shiloh, right? And put it in the temple, in the first temple with King Solomon, right? The first temple got destroyed. There was not a Passover for a span of maybe 70 years until the second temple got built up, right? So
You said 70 AD.
no, I misspoke, right? So for about 70 years, and then after the second temple fell after 70 AD, right? From that moment on, the nation of Israel, every Black, Hispanic, and Native American, and others scattered abroad, for the last almost 2,000 years, the nation of Israel has not kept the Lord's Passover. Why? Because the only place you're able to sacrifice the Lord's Passover, according to Deuteronomy 16:5 and 6, is where the name of the Lord's name is, where he placed his name at. Where now it is at Jerusalem at the temple, right? But since we don't have the temple, we're not in the possession of the land. There is no altar with the name of Yahweh on it. We don't have the priesthoods. We're unable to do these things now, right? The last 2,000 years, we have not kept the Lord's Passover. So that is true. The only place that you can keep the Lord's Passover is in the land. If you do it outside, keep the Lord's Passover outside of the land, you are in sin, right? So, talking about the holy days, right? And we're gonna get into if we should celebrate these things in America, right? I'm gonna be touching that, but just stay tuned. I need y'all to walk with me, take notes, right? And try to understand what these scriptures are saying, right? And again, let me know if I'm going too fast. I'll try to slow it down. Just let me know, right? So now we're going to be going into the holy days, right? So I'm not going to read every single chapter with you guys for time's sake, but I definitely suggest that you fact check us, right? Go read every single verse that I'm going to bring forth in this presentation, right? So we know that we received the ordinances to keep the Passover and unleavened bread in Exodus 12. We know that, right? If you haven't read Exodus 12, I suggest you go read Exodus 12. It gives us the account of why we should sacrifice the Passover, right? Why they had to sacrifice the Passover in Egypt, right? Shalom Tatzamach, man. Right? So, we didn't receive the commandments of the first fruits and tabernacles until after we left Egypt, amongst other laws, right? So Deuteronomy 16 and 9 through 12, Baba Kasha.
This is Deuteronomy 16, verse 9.
Uh-huh.
It says, 7 weeks shalt thou number unto thee. Begin to number the 7 weeks, from such time as thou beginnest to put the sickle to the corn. And thou shalt keep the feast of weeks unto the Lord thy God with a tribute of a freewill offering of thine hand, which thou shalt give unto the Lord thy God, according as the Lord thy God has blessed thee. And thou shalt rejoice before the Lord thy God, thou and thy son and thy daughter and thy manservant and thy maidservant, and the Levite that is within thy gate, and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow that are among you.
Where?
In the place which the Lord thy God hath chosen to place his name there.
So if you guys are celebrating Pentecost, you're doing it incorrectly. Just like how you say that you had to keep the Passover in the place where the Lord thy God's name is chosen. That's the same thing for Pentecost, right? So according to the Torah, we must keep the Feast of Weeks in the place where the Lord's name is too. But that's not it, right? Go ahead.
This is verse 13 in Deuteronomy 16. Thou shalt observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days. After that, thou hast gathered in thy corn and thy wine, and thou shalt rejoice in the feast, thou and thy son, and thy daughter, and thy manservant, and thy maidservant, and the Levite, the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow that are within thy gates.
So after we keep the Feast of First Fruits, right? We keep Tabernacles, right? But watch this, verse 15.
7 days shalt thou keep a solemn feast unto the Lord thy God.
Where?
In the place which the Lord shall choose.
Okay, right? So because the Lord thy God, right? Keep going.
Finish it, yeah. Because the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thy increase and in all the works of thine hands, therefore thou shalt surely rejoice.
Right? So the Passover, the Feast of First Fruits, Tabernacles are all supposed to be in the place where the Lord first placed his name, not America, right? So not just camps, but this whole nation of Israel, which consists of every Black, Hispanic, and Native American, Indians, and others abroad, haven't kept these laws, right, since after the fall of the temple, right, after 70 AD, because there are specific requirements. People need to understand there are specific criteria and requirements for all of these laws, right? And if you're not keeping all of these requirements and criteria, it does not qualify, right? So we aren't in possession in the land to give our first fruits of the land. We can't keep the Lord's Passover because we're not in the land. We aren't in the land, so we can't keep tabernacles properly. All three of these things require holy sacrifices, an altar, priest, the place where the Lord's name is, right? All of these things have to be in order for it to be considered these holy days. Anything out of these requirements do not qualify, right? These specific laws are once we're in possession at the land and once we're at rest, once we received our inheritances, right? This is how we should govern the land and carry these holy days there, right? So we're going to be going into the laws while we're in possession of the land and the inheritance, right? So, and where to sacrifice, right? So timelines are key to understanding how things went down, right? If you could get Deuteronomy 11.
This is Deuteronomy 11 and 31 and 32.
And Salakia. Like the brother had said, these books weren't put into verses, chapters, and all this stuff. They were one continuous scroll, right? So the context of Deuteronomy 12 actually starts at the end of Deuteronomy 11 on the last two verses, right? Go ahead.
Deuteronomy 11 and 31 in the NASB. It says, For you are about to cross the Jordan to go into take possession of the land which the Lord your God is giving you, and you shall possess it and live in it.
Right.
And you shall be careful to do all these statutes and the judgments which I am placing before you today.
So this happened before they got into the land. The Lord is telling us that, hey, you're about to cross into the Jordan to take possession of the land, but I'm about to tell you how the statutes of what you should do when you're living in that land and you possess it, right? So how do we govern the land, right? If you could get Deuteronomy 12:8, Baba Kashaw.
This is Deuteronomy 12:8.
Uh-huh.
You shall not do after all the things that we do here this day.
Right.
Every man whatsoever is right in his own eyes.
Right. So before they had the Ark of the Covenant's altar, right, people were sacrificing everywhere. All they did was build an altar and choose where a spot, and they dedicated it to the Lord, right? So there's examples before the nation of Israel too. Even Israel, right? Jacob, when he got his name turned to Israel, he went after that and he got whole stones and he built them up as an altar to the Lord, right? And then the thing is, the Lord, there's multiple times where people had built these things, right, wherever they were, and they dedicated it to the Lord. From this time moving forward, once we became a nation, the Lord in the Torah gave us a law and said, you're not to do that, but where you used to do wherever you thought was right now you're only able to sacrifice where the Lord's name is at, where he's going to choose, right? And we saw that the first place was Shiloh, right? So verse 9.
This is Deuteronomy 12:9. It says, for ye are not as yet come to the rest and to the inheritance which the Lord your God giveth you.
Right. So even right now, family, right? So right now, every camp is keeping holy days at different times because we aren't in the land of our rest, like verse 9 says. We're not in our inheritance. But when we are there, this is how we conduct those sacrifices, right? Deuteronomy 12:1.
This is Deuteronomy 12:1. These are the statutes and judgments which ye shall observe to do in the land which the Lord God of thy fathers giveth thee to possess it, all the days that ye live upon the earth.
Right. So it says right here that this is the laws, right? These are the statutes that we do while we're in the land and once we possess the land. This is how you move. This is how you you basically go about these sacrifices, man. Right? So, for example, this proves that this is the way that we operate while we're in possession of the land of our inheritance. Right? If you didn't know, newsflash, we're not in possession of Israel right now, right? But go ahead.
No, that was going to be my question. So, so ultimately, we cannot keep Passover in Jerusalem because we do not have a temple.
It's a list of things.
Yeah.
Why we can't keep the Lord's Passover today, right? Mm-hmm. We can't keep the Lord's Passover because when we're not in possession of the land, right. Deuteronomy 12:9 says right there, once we're in the land and rest and we possess it for our inheritance, right. This is how we keep Passover there. Right. But because we're not in possession, we don't have a temple, we don't have an altar, we don't have priests.
The Ark of the Covenant, how that sister said.
Yeah, or even the Ark of the Covenant. We're not able to do these things today. And if you do sacrifice the Lord's Passover outside of the land, you're going off, right?
Because I'm going into that because, like, maybe I talk to a brother or sister that might be a little bit, educated and might be also lost at the same time.
Okay.
But have questions, just like we have brothers and sisters in the chat.
And definitely send this video, bro. Definitely send this video, right?
We'll get to it.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna get to all that, right? So for example, right? These are laws that we do while we're in the land. What is one of the laws aside from those that we have to do while we're in the land and possess it? Go ahead, Deuteronomy
verse 2. Right? It says, ye shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which ye shall possess served their gods upon the high mountains and upon the hills and under every green tree.
Right? So this is the reason why you don't see Israelites in America going to break down, running right up inside churches and breaking down Jesus statues and Saint Virgin Mary statues, right? You can't just apply these things everywhere. There's a context to this, right? It says when you go into the land to possess it, you are to destroy all these places where these Canaanites, right? It's the land of Canaan that we're taking over. It says to destroy these statues that were served by these gods, right? And it's going to say how they served them, right? Go ahead.
Exactly. And ye shall overthrow their altars.
Their what?
Their altars.
They had altars there. That's how you sacrifice, right? Go ahead.
And break their pillars and burn their groves with fire.
Right? So when you go to the Hebrew word for grove, it's Asheroth, right? That's a Canaanite god, right? They would sacrifice, they had different gods, right? But all these people had altars, right? Pillars. What else? Go ahead.
And ye shall hew down the graven images of their gods, and destroy the names of them out of that place.
Graven images, when you go into the Hebrew, that's a statue, right? So these people would have statues, right? And they would sacrifice unto those gods, right? It says when you go into the land, right, of Canaan, when you're about to go over there, right, destroy those altars. And you know what's funny about these altars? Verse 3 says that the names of those gods were on the altars. They were on these things, right? So that's key point, right? That's a key point. Oh, shoot. Let me see. Right. So
the gods that you're supposed to stay away from.
yeah, that we're supposed to destroy, right? So it says once we get into that land, we're supposed to destroy the altars with the names of those gods there, man. Right? Why? Because that's the land that's about to be our holy land, man. We had to get it. We had to clean it out and blot their names out and put the name of the Lord there, right? So when we are in possession of the land, right, we gained it from the heathen. We were to break down all the altars, all the pillars, the groves, the statues that all the Canaanites were sacrificing to in their land, right? How did they sacrifice it? On altars, right? So the gods had their names all over the land as well with all the altars and the statues, and we destroyed it all, right? If you get that.
This is Deuteronomy 12, 5 through 6 in the NASB. It says, but you shall seek the Lord at the place which the Lord your God will choose from all your tribes to establish his name there for his dwelling.
Right.
And you shall come there.
Right. So once we get the land, we will be allotted tribes, like we just explained earlier in Joshua, right? Since we blotted out the idols' names out of the land, the Lord is going to put his name in one part of the land, in one specific tribe, so we could go sacrifice there, right? Verse 6.
Verse 6 says, you shall bring there your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, the contribution of your hand, your vowed offerings, your voluntary offerings, and the firstborn of your herd and of your flock.
These are all the holy things that we're required to bring to the place where the Lord put his name at, right? I want y'all to remember this. These are the holy things, right? This is where we bring our sacrifices to, where the name of the Lord is specially, right, the holy things sacrificed and offered. But guess what? There are sacrifices we are allowed to do outside of the place where the name of the Lord isn't, right? Go ahead.
Verse 19, it says, be careful that you do not abandon the Levite as long as you live in your land.
Remember this. This is key point. Be careful that you not abandon the Levite, right? What's that talking about? The Levites didn't have their own inheritance, right? All the tribes that were in the land of Israel, they had Ephraim, Issachar, Judah, Benjamin, right? Levi didn't get one, bro. What is it? Why? Because Levi lived in everybody's lot, right? Why? It was our job to feed them and give an increase onto them, right? That was their inheritance, right? Verse 20.
Verse 20, when the Lord your God extends your border as he has promised you, and you say, I will eat meat,
right?
Because you desire to eat meat, then you may eat meat whatever you desire.
Right. So right here it's saying like when you're hungry, you want something to eat, you trying to eat some meat, right? So go ahead.
If the place where the Lord your God chooses to put his name is too far from you,
right? So if the place where the Lord your God's name is too far from you, right? What does it say?
Then you may slaughter, right? It's we have zabak.
Yeah, so it's the right there, that word for slaughter or kill, right? That word is zabak. That's not the same Hebrew word for kill. What is zabak? That's sacrifice, right? That is sacrifice. It's not the Hebrew word for kill, right? So it says, go on with the animals.
Con animals from your herd and flock which the Lord has given you, as I have commanded you, and you may eat within your gates whatever you desire.
So you're able to sacrifice, right, zabak in your gates, whatever you desire, right? So if the place of the Lord is too far from you, you may sacrifice these things. Why? Because we had Levites with us in our own gates, right? And we had to feed them as well. Don't forsake Levi, like it just said in verse 19, right? Go ahead, verse 22.
Verse 22, just as a gazelle or a deer is eaten, so you may eat it. The unclean and the clean alike may eat it.
So this is talking about regular foods, not holy foods, right? So just like Muslims, they're required to eat halal food. That's the only thing they're required to eat, right? Which is the food sacrificed unto Allah, right? We are only supposed to eat food sacrificed to our God, Yahweh, when we're in possession of the land. When we're in possession of the land, all food gets sacrificed to Yahweh, right? But the thing is, there's regular food that we can sacrifice ourselves within our own gates, and there's holy foods and offerings that we have to go only where the name of the Lord is, right? So from Deuteronomy chapter 11 all the way to Deuteronomy chapter 26, these are all laws that involve how to sacrifice and govern while we're in possession of the land, right? There are other laws that we found, all right, after in other books of the Torah, right? For example, Leviticus 17, right?
Con, this is Leviticus 17, 3 through 6 in the NASB.
Go ahead.
Anyone from the house of Israel who slaughters an ox, a lamb, or a goat in the camp, or slaughters it outside the camp, and has not brought it to the doorway of the tent of meeting,
the tabernacle, right? Go ahead.
to present it as an offering to the Lord in front of the tabernacle of the Lord,
right?
Bloodshed is to be counted against that person. He has shed blood, and that person shall be cut off from among his people.
Right. So they kept this Passover in Gilgal. Joshua should have been cut off according to Torah. This is how we know that it was of the Lord in Gilgal. Why? Because the whole nation would have been cut off according to, they already received this law, mind you, right? They would have been cut off. They never would have been into the land of Canaan. The Lord never would have been with them because they sinned, and they would have lost all the battles. But well, guess what? They didn't, right? Therefore, that Passover in Gilgal was sanctioned, right? So, right, verse 5, go ahead.
This shall be done so that the sons of Israel will bring their sacrifices, which they were sacrificing in the open field,
right?
So that they will bring them to the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting to the priests, and sacrifice them as sacrifices of peace offerings to the Lord.
Right here, this isn't talking about Passover. Leviticus 17 contextually is not talking about Passover. These are peace offerings. These are blood atonements. This is talking about to the high priest. Contextually has nothing to do with the Passover, right? So it's saying if whoever's gonna sacrifice a lamb or any of these different things has to bring it before the tent, before the tent of the Passover, right? I mean, of the tabernacle, right? These are blood atonements that are to be sprinkled, right? So this isn't talking about the Passover. These are holy things, though, that could only be sacrificed in front of the name of the Lord. But this is showing, I'm going to be showing you like another verses that show that you don't have to do that with every single food that you do. Not every single animal you kill is a sacrifice unto the Lord, right? So verse 8.
It says verse You have that one on here. So it's just verse
Oh, it's
6.
verse 6, Salaki.
Con, verse 6. The priest shall sprinkle the blood on the altar of the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting, and offer up the fat and smoke as a soothing aroma to the Lord.
Right. So this is, I'm showing you, this is not talking about Passover. Right. So these are holy things specifically here that these are blood atonements for peace offerings unto the Lord. The reason why it has to be at the tabernacle is because that's where the altar of the Lord with his name is. This is speaking about the holy sacrifices that belong to the Lord. But when it's a normal animal, we are only told to make sure that we spill the blood and not consume it, right? Leviticus 17 and 13.
Con, in the NASB,
Uh-huh.
it says, so when anyone from the sons of Israel or from the strangers who reside among them, while hunting, catches an animal or a bird which may be eaten, he shall pour out its blood and cover it with dirt.
Notice we aren't being told to bring that bird to the tabernacle at the altar where the name of the Lord is. It's just normal food, right? That was Leviticus 17 and 13, right? Notice it's not telling us to go bring it to before the tabernacle and the altar, right? Because it's just normal food. We may eat it in our own gates after it's sacrificed by a Levite. Just make sure that you spill the blood in the dirt, because that's where the life is, in the blood, right? Deuteronomy 12 and 15, Baba Kasha.
Con, in the NASB, it says, however, you may slaughter and eat meat within any of your gates.
Right? You may slaughter and eat meat within any of your gates. Again, right? These words are zabak, sacrifice, right? Go ahead.
Whatever you desire, according to the blessing of the Lord your God, which he has given you. The unclean and the clean alike may eat it, as the gazelle and the deer.
Right? This isn't talking about Passover. This is talking about normal foods, right? The unclean and the clean may eat just regular food, right? You bring it to the Levites, you sacrifice it, right? You spill the blood, right? And anybody can eat it, right? Normal food, right? Verse 16.
Con, only you shall not eat the blood.
You
You are to pour it out on the ground like water.
right?
You are not allowed to eat within your gates the tithe of your gain, new wine, or oil, or the firstborn of your herd or flock, or any of your vowed offerings which you vow, or your voluntary offerings, or the contribution of your hand.
All those things that he just read right there, those are holy things unto Yahweh. Normal foods we could sacrifice and eat there. Those things that he just read, you can't just do that anywhere, right? So, verse 18.
Verse 18, but you shall eat them before the Lord your God in the place which the Lord your God will choose.
Right? So, in the place where the Lord your God will choose, this is where you bring all those sacrifices, right? Go ahead.
You and your son and daughter, and your male and female slaves, and the Levite who is within your gate, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God in all your undertakings.
Right? So, this is where you go. You even bring your Levites that are within your gates, and you come up to the Lord where his place, in the place where his name is at, right? To sacrifice those holy things, right? These are the things that we must eat in the name of the Lord, right? So we know that the unclean may not eat of Passover. This is how we know we're differentiating what people can eat and what people cannot eat, right? So Numbers 9 and 10, Baba Kasha.
This is Numbers chapter 9, verse 10. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, if any man of you or of your posterity shall be unclean by reason of a dead body, or be in a journey afar off, yet he shall keep the Passover unto the Lord. The 14th day of the second month at even they shall keep it, and eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs.
So if your people are unclean, you have to miss the first Passover and wait until you're clean again for the makeup Passover, right? So this is showing you emphatically, if you're unclean, you can't eat this holy sacrifice, right? But the verse above in Deuteronomy 12 says if you're unclean, you can still eat regular sacrifice food, regular foods that you got from the Levite, right? Right? So verse 11.
Verse 12.
Verse 12.
Right? It says, they shall leave none of it onto the morning, nor break any bone of it.
Right.
According to all the ordinances of the Passover shall they keep it.
Right.
But the man that is clean and is not in a journey,
Mhm.
and forbeareth to keep the Passover,
Mhm.
even the same soul shall be cut off from his people,
Mm.
because he brought not the offering of the Lord in his appointed season. That man shall bear his sin.
Joshua would have got cut off, bro. It says if you're clean, right, you're circumcised, you're clean, right? But if you don't keep Passover, you're going to get cut off, right? They all had to keep Passover in Gilgal, or else they were going to get cut off. And what's messed up is if they kept Passover wrong, they would still get cut off. Neither one of those things happened. They went and the Lord was with them. Gilgal was sanctioned, man, right? So also them who are not circumcised may not eat it, right? Let's get that.
Exodus 12:47.
Uh-huh.
Right, it says all the congregation of Israel shall keep it.
All the congregation of Israel should keep it, right? Go ahead.
And when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover to the Lord,
Uh-huh.
let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one that is born in the land,
Mhm.
for no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof.
So this is the reason why you can't be unclean and you can't be uncircumcised and eat the Passover, right? The unclean may only eat food sacrificed that isn't holy things unto the Lord, just normal food. Contextually, this isn't talking about unclean and uncircumcised eating the Passover and other holy things. But they are allowed to eat sacrificed regular foods, right? The unclean and the uncircumcised, you may eat normal food, just not the main holy sacrifices that were listed, right? So this shows the difference between normal food and holy sacrifice foods and offerings, right? And who's allowed to eat what. Excuse me. So now, in order for it to be those holy day sacrifices, it must follow certain criteria for it to even be considered an offering or a sacrifice, right? Now that we got those out the way, biblically, what are sacrifices and what are offerings in the Bible? All right, let's get into sacrifices, right? So, Genesis 8, Baba Kushah.
Now this is Genesis 8:20.
Uh-huh.
And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord,
Right.
and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar.
So the very first sacrifice in the Bible after the flood was with Noah. And guess what he did? He built an altar unto the Most High and he sacrificed clean animals on it. Mind you, he didn't even get the laws of Moses yet. He's still doing the things that we were instructed. This shows that this goes past all the way back then, right? These concepts of altars and sacrifice and clean animals onto Yahweh went before the time of Moses, right? So, go ahead.
Genesis 22.
Yes, sir.
This is Genesis 22:9.
Uh-huh.
And they came to the place which God had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there,
Right.
and laid the wood in order,
Mhm.
and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood.
Right. So Abraham built an altar, right? And put his son and laid him on the altar, right? Go ahead.
The next one, Salakia.
Right. Oh, so, no, that you were good at Salakia. Right. So, right, if you're familiar with the story, right? Abraham was praying for Isaac. For praying to have a son, a child, right? A son, right? They were of old age. He wanted a son so bad because he never had one. The Lord finally heard his prayer and gave him Isaac, right? And then the Lord Abraham loved him so much and he wanted to sacrifice Isaac, right? And so he wanted to see how faithful Abraham was. So he told him to sacrifice Isaac. That's a story. You could go read that, right, in Genesis. But my point here is that he built an altar to sacrifice him unto the Lord, right? I need y'all to keep these things in mind, right? So this is the angel had to stop him from killing Isaac on that altar, right? So Numbers 5:25.
Numbers 5:25.
Uh-huh.
Then the priest shall take the jealousy offering out of the woman's hand,
Mhm.
and shall wave the offering before the Lord
Uh-huh.
and offer it upon the altar.
Right? So this right here in Numbers 5 and 25, if you guys are familiar, I suggest if you haven't read Numbers 5, you go read Numbers 5, right? This is talking about the spirit of jealousy over here, right? So when Israelite man had doubts that his wife, right, has been sleeping with another man, but he just hasn't caught her in the act or just simply can't prove it, a spirit of jealousy would hop upon an Israelite man, right? So if that spirit of jealousy happened to hop on him, he would bring his wife before the tabernacle and before the priest and before the altar, right? This right here, this is not an animal sacrifice here. There's no animals being involved here when you read this chapter, right? This is a ritual. This is not a sacrifice, right? But the reason I'm bringing this up is because even rituals require an altar, right? It says right there, they offered it upon the altar, right? So no animals were involved here. These were actually grains and grains alone that were being put on the altar, right? So Exodus 32, Bible
Tron in the NASB,
Uh-huh.
right? It says, then he took the gold from their hands
Right.
and fashioned it with an engraving tool
Mm-hmm.
and made it into a cast golden calf.
Right.
And they said, this is your God, Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt.
Uh-huh.
Now, when Aaron saw this,
Right.
he built an altar in front of it.
Right.
And Aaron made a proclamation and said, tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord.
Right. So y'all, I hope y'all are familiar with this story right here in Exodus, right? Moses went to go present himself in front of the Lord. He was up there for 40 days.
Yeah.
He was up there for 40 days. His face came down shining with the countenance on his face, right? So while he was gone for that time, the whole children of Israel were tripping out and they were like, man, where has he gone? We got brought out of Egypt just for us to die. Now Moses has abandoned us. What shall we do? Now we got Aaron, right? We got Aaron that took all the gold from everybody and he made a golden calf, right? You know that golden calf everybody be joking about, right? Like, dang, like they went to go worship a golden calf. That's the one, right? And they said that this is the God that brought you out of the land of Egypt, right? Verse 5 clearly shows that there was an altar. It says he built an altar in front of it and proclaimed, tomorrow shall be a feast day unto the Lord, right? So this is when Aaron sacrificed on that golden calf, it was on the altar, which they sacrificed and they ate it. This is how they had the feast, right? It wouldn't have been a sacrifice if they just killed it. Aaron had to build an altar, right? Because even the idols of the land required an altar to even sacrifice that. Let's get precepts on that, right?
Con.
Go ahead.
This is Judges 6 and 25
Uh-huh.
in the NASB.
Go ahead.
It says, now on the same night, the Lord said unto him, take your father's bull and a second bull, 7 years old, and tear down the altar of Baal.
The altar of who?
Of Baal,
Right.
which belongs to your father, and cut down the Asheroth that is beside it.
Right. So there's not one time that somebody just simply killed an animal in the Bible and it was deemed a sacrifice, man. Right. Not the Most High, right? The Most High God is only going to accept it if we have the altar and all these other requirements. But guess what? Even the idols in the Bible, they require altars, right? So as you can see, Baal even had his own altar, right? So they were here in the land before we even got to the land of Israel. That's why we had to destroy the altars when we first came into the land, just like Deuteronomy 12 and 3 says. But now, so we know that King Solomon had about 1,000 wives, right? But his sin wasn't counted onto him because he had 1,000 wives, but was because he committed idolatry, right? That's the reason why he was warned. These strange women were going to make you go off, right? And convince you to commit idolatry, right? This is 1 Kings chapter 11. In 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 7, it shows King Solomon built altars unto the god of Moab, which is Chemush, right? and the god of Ammon, which is Molech, for his wives to sacrifice in the land, which is breaking the law. We read that in Deuteronomy 12:3. There was supposed to be no idols in our land, no altars. You were supposed to break down all the altars, right? In 2 Kings 21:3-5, King Manasseh built altars of Baal and Asherah, which were Canaanite gods, inside of our temple, bro. They built the altars inside of our temple, and this is what caused the temple to be defiled. And that's why later on, the kings affected those things that those kings did were the reason why the temples were destroyed in the first place, man. Right? But aside from that, even in the New Testament, when the Romans and the Greeks come into power with these gods and these idols, guess what? They even had altars for them. If you could get that, Babu Kashaf.
Khan, this is 1 Corinthians 10:18 in the GNT. Right? It says, "Consider the people of Israel.
All right.
Those who eat what is offered in sacrifice,
Right.
share in the altar's service to God. Do I imply then that an idol or the food offered to it really amounts to anything?"
The idol and the food offered to it, right? Go ahead.
He says, "No. What I am saying is that what is sacrificed on pagan altars is offered to demons, not to God.
Right.
And I do not want you to be partakers with demons."
Right. So even in the New Testament with Romans and Greeks, in these temples, when they were sacrificing foods onto demons, they required altars there. And here's another witness on that in the New Testament, right? If you could get that.
Now, this is Acts 17:22. Then Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill and said, "Ye men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you are too superstitious."
Ye men of Athens, right? This is a Greek provenance, right? Go ahead.
"For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar with the inscription to the unknown God."
An altar, right? They found altars with devotions on it, right? Sacrifices, offerings, all the good stuff, right? Go ahead.
"Whom therefore ye ignorantly worship. Him declare I unto you."
So there's not one place in the Bible after, right, especially after Noah, right, where we see an example of animals, humans, or even babies being sacrificed without an altar at all, right? So biblically, you need an altar for it to be deemed a sacrifice or even a ritual, right? The rituals needed the altar, like we just read in Numbers chapter 5, verse 25, right? Offerings, sacrifices, vows, all these things unto Yahweh requires the altar, right? Even outside of the Bible, right? Most religions, right? Other occults, dark practices like voodoo require altars, right? The Bohemian Grove, right? We're from California over here in the Refiners, man. Like not too far away from here, like probably like an hour or so away. There's a place called the Bohemian Grove. This is where people had practiced sacrifices in California, right? Y'all probably heard of it. It's like they got a statue of a big owl, right? And they have an altar. It's still there. You could go over there. I think it's like private property, and you gotta you get in trouble if you go there. But they still got an altar there, right? So even Masonic lodges, Freemasons, they have altars in their lodges, right in the middle with the checkered floors. They have an altar where they do mock sacrifices, right? They do all these rituals and all this different stuff. Guess what? They have an altar. They need for it to be a sacrifice or a ritual. They even know that you need altars, right? But I do want to be fair with you guys, Akim and Akwath, right? There are some religions that don't require an altar to have a sacrifice, right? But most of these new religions are after the times of the Bible, right? They don't require sacrifices. For sacrifices, they don't require an altar. For an example, Islam. We know Islam came hundreds of years after the Bible, right? So, yeah, it's in the redwood forest, right? That's exactly where it's at. So, for example, Islam, you don't need an altar to sacrifice to Allah. but they still do have requirements to even it for it to even be seen as a sacrifice, right? So the person that sacrifices, right, the animal which they eat for it to be halal, it must be a Muslim man, right? They must use a sharp knife. They must drain its blood. They must position it towards Mecca, right? And they must say out loud the name of Allah, right? And they must pray. They must pray over it while they're killing the animal, right? It's haram in their religion to sacrifice on the altar, right? Because all the other gods require an altar, including Yahweh, right? They think so. That's how stupid Islam is, right? They think they're not going off because they're not using an altar, right? But this is how we know we don't have the same God. They'd be like, oh, we have the same God. Oh, it's the God of Abraham. My God requires an altar, yours doesn't, right? Islam is trash, right? But that
And so like
Yeah, go ahead.
just because the brother posted on there, right? Yawanathan's Shalom King, and that's another. If I didn't mention it before, slipped my mind. The brother servants of Yahweh as well. Those are some of the brothers. Shout out the brother Rob who gave me some insight on this as well.
right.
Right.
Man, shout out to all the brothers that we spoke to, man. No matter what camp, no matter what doctrine, what y'all believe in, man. You know what I'm saying? We were able to talk and get together and talk about things that need to be for the sake of our people, right? So, yeah, so like I said, this is how we prove that we don't have the same God, man, right? The only reason that that Islam can't use an altar to sacrifice is because the rest of the gods of every other god requires an altar to sacrifice. It's haram to sacrifice on the altar, right? That's how
Imagine
stupid
that.
they are, bro. Right? So they're just like, all right, well, let's just sacrifice without an altar, right? And this is how we know that Islam isn't an ancient religion, bro. Right? All the gods of antiquity required an altar, right? So now what's the conclusion, man? Right? What shall we say then? Right? I bet everybody's wondering, like, all right, refiners, are y'all so what's the answer? Right? Y'all said that we can't keep the Lord's Passover outside of of where now it is Jerusalem, outside where the temple is, right? It's a sin to keep the Lord's Passover outside of now Jerusalem, right? We agree. You cannot sacrifice the Lord's Passover outside of the land of Jerusalem. You cannot properly keep tabernacles, Feast of Pentecost, Feast of First Fruits, all these things properly without being in the land of Jerusalem, without the altar, without the temple, without the priest, without all the requirements that make these things holy, right? So what shall we say then? Are we in sin because we're celebrating or commemorating these things in America? So I'm going to tell y'all right now, the answer is no, we are not sinning. We are not in sin by celebrating these holy days in America because we are commemorating these days. For example, we have Hanukkah, aka the Feast of Dedication. We celebrate the days in remembrance of the temple being rededicated to the Lord and Maccabees. We aren't physically building the temple every year and dedicating it. We're just remembering something that happened in history and remembering it on these days, right? They light the candles, they remember all the stuff. Those are rituals too. It's not, there's nowhere in the Bible that says that you're unable to do rituals outside of the land, right? It says sacrifice the Lord's Passovers and holy things outside of where the name of the Lord's name is at in that place. Those are the only things that we are not allowed to do, right? So what we're doing biblically is not even a sacrifice, right? The Bible shows us that demons require altars as well. We showed you guys that Baal, there's an altar Baal, there's an altar to Chemosh, there's an altar to Molech, and there's an altar to Asheroth, right? There's even in the New Testament with the Roman gods and the Greek gods, they had altars there too as well in their temples in Athens, in Ephesus, all these different places. They even had an altar biblically, right? So according to the Bible, these things that we're doing for Passover does not qualify as a sacrifice at all, right? We're not committing zabak. These things have to be done for it to, all these things have to be checked off the list to have a passing grade for it to be considered a holy thing, right? If I just kill an animal over here on a day, biblically, that is not a holy sacrifice. Just because it's a day, or just because I got a lamb and it's 1 year old, right? I kill it. That is not the Lord's sacrifice. If I put it for if I don't break the bones, that still doesn't count as the Lord's sacrifice, right? We aren't so the Bible shows us all these things, right? The Lord's Passover requires the land, the altar, the temple in Jerusalem, right? So simply killing the lamb and eating it on a day doesn't qualify as the Lord's Passover or even a sacrifice. It's a memorial meal and that's it, right? So with that, are we supposed to be commemorating or celebrating these holidays in America? Our answer and what we've come down to after talking with everybody, right, after reading these scriptures in context and seeing what it's saying, there's nowhere in the Bible that says that we can't commemorate or celebrate these days outside of the land, right, Salakia, right, outside of the land, right, because we haven't done these things for the last 2,000 years technically. When I first came into to Sakari, right, when I went to Atlanta to go commemorate the Passover, that wasn't even the Lord's Passover. You are in sin though, right? You are going off, right? If you're building an altar, right, doing all the things that are required for it to be holy and saying that this is the Lord's Passover for the nation of Israel, right? You can't do that. You are going off. There's other camps. I'm not going to say a name of the camp that says that we keep the Lord's Passover here in America, right? Just because I'm not trying to cause division, right? But there's certain camps that say that this is the Lord's Passover in America. You are going off by saying that, man, right? You could, according to Deuteronomy 16:5-6, you can only keep the Lord's Passover in the land over there. And the next Passover, the last Passover that we had was after before the fall of 70 AD at the temple. The next Lord's Passover that we're going to have, right, is when Christ Hamashiach Yahushai comes back and establishes the third temple, and we're going to be sacrificing bullocks. What we're doing right now biblically does not qualify as the Lord's Passover. Therefore, we are not in sin by doing these things, right? Those laws are only online when we're in possession of the land. Once we're in the land, living in the land with our inheritance as rest, this is how we're to do Passover there. Right now, those things are offline, right? They do not apply to us right now in America, right? But because we're not doing all the things that check off for the Passover to be holy, we're not committing a sin, right? It's not a sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to be doing here at the refiners, man. When our Passover, right, comes up, we're going to be still eating the lamb, right? But guess what? That's not the Lord's Passover. It does not qualify for that, man.
Yeah.
Right?
I'll say it's for sure a memorial. And I think the biggest thing is don't be in the gray area, like how we talk about, like how you said, brothers probably do build an altar and do the most for this thing. That is going off, right? We are simply having a memorial. We're having a meal. The same way how I know we didn't bring it up. The same way how Job slaughtered an animal, and we're celebrating right now. That's exactly what we're doing, right? But here's the thing: a lot of brothers have like, oh no, even brothers that when we were talking about it in our organization, when we start talking about, well, look, this is what it says, but this is the requirements for a sacrifice. They're like, well, I don't want to do everything that the Bible says then, because then it'll be cutting it too close to it. We have the understanding that in order for it to be a sacrifice, in order for it to properly be a sacrifice, it's at the temple of the Lord. So with that said, right, we are following as much as we can to the best of our ability. Does that mean then, like how one brother said, well, we can add this to it and we can make, like I was joking with him. I'm like, does that mean now then that I'm going to make curry lamb and just be like, well, because it's not the Lord's sacrifice, I'm going to just do whatever I want, throw buffalo sauce on it? No, I'm going to respect the Most High God's ordinances. We are getting a lamb on the 10th day. We are sacrificing at the 14th day at even. We're going to try our best to not break no bones like how we did last year. Thank God that went that way. We're going to burn the lamb. Everything that we are able to do, we're going to do. It's a remembrance of it. The same reason why I'm saying this is because the same way that how you guys, right? I'm talking about the brothers who posted this video and started confusing people and even got brothers to, they're not even going to keep Passover. The same way how you're not correcting those brothers and telling them, well, you sleeping in a tent for Feast of Tabernacles technically isn't celebrating Tabernacles, so just don't do it. If you're not going to those lengths to do that with these brothers, why bring stuff like this up and just cause confusion to brothers? Like how one of the sisters said earlier, we're keeping these commandments to the best of our ability, right? And that's exactly what we're trying to do with this, right? We're not saying this is the Lord's Passover. We're not building no altar onto it. It's not a sacrifice onto it, but we are going to try the best of our ability to do the things that the Most High God required of us, right? And
yeah, so with that he just said, right? Even if you do get a lamb, right, and separate it for the 10th day, right? Do all the stuff that we can do in our ability onto Yahweh's eyes, it's still not holy.
yeah.
It has to qualify every single thing for it to become a holy animal sacrifice, right? Just us alone, we can't make it holy. It's Yahweh that makes it holy through his altar, through his name, through his land in Jerusalem, with the temple, with the priest, right? Just us alone separating it, not breaking the bones, doesn't make it holy, right?
And also another point, there was brothers that were saying, right, well, I'm not going to sacrifice it. I'm just going to go buy some lamb at the store. What's the difference? What's the difference between you killing it and some random stranger killing it? People say, well, it's the intent. Either way, a lamb got slain and you're eating it on that day, bro. Let's be real. Like this is the games that people want to play with, being okay, well, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, bro. Keep it to the best of your ability on there. Whether some random stranger killed it and you just I don't know, bro. That's a confusing part of this. So with that said, right, we are keeping it to the best of our ability. No heathen is going to be eating of our lamb. No uncircumcised man is going to be keeping it, because we're trying to do things to the best of our ability. And we will be keeping Passover. I want to make that very clear. Shout out to all the brothers who all the elders that we went to, right? And all the brothers that we went to gave us insight on why they do it. And this, to me, seems the most straight to the point on why these Passovers that we are keeping are not sacrifices, and how they are not committing sins according to the scripture, right? And the water to the Most High God for giving our brother AHYLAWAN, right, this spirit to go into these things, right? Because when he started bringing them up to me, I'm like, bro, this makes sense. Because even me, right, and like the brother Amatazah, when he had brought this up to us, I'm like, all right, I want to make sure that everything, the answer that we give, resonates with us, because we're not just gonna do something just because, you know what I mean? Ultimately, we're gonna do things because we see it in the scripture, and it's to praise the Most High God ultimately at the end of the day, right?
Right. And then if y'all ever have any questions, right, you know what I'm saying, if there's anything y'all need answered, y'all more than welcome to hit us up. You know, hit us up on Instagram, you know, email, TikTok, YouTube, all that good stuff, right? And you know what I'm saying, I just want to put this out there right now, we will not be debating nobody on this topic. We're just gonna put that out there right now, right? This is, if y'all don't agree, hey, so be it, right? Y'all don't want to celebrate Passover. That's between you and the Lord, right? But this is something that had to be put out. You know, I was contemplating even making this lesson, right? Because I didn't want to seem like I'm going against certain individuals or camps, or I'm trying to start smoke. It's none of that. But I got brought to my attention by man, shout out Quanawath from the Malachian, man, right? That we should still be a light, you know what I'm saying? And these type of doctrines could make other people stumble and entirely stop keeping the law, period, you know? So that's not something that we want to do. We want to encourage our people to keep our culture at the end of the day. Though it's not the Lord's Passover, it's still our culture.
It is not the Lord's Feast of Tabernacles as well, right? This is a memorial things that we're doing. You sleeping in that Walmart tent is not the Feast of Tabernacles, according to thus says the Bible.
Getting a basket of Fruit of Looms, right? And with cornucopia of oranges and apples and all this other stuff, right? But all these things are these are just us keeping our culture, man, right? It isn't the actual things, but it's just us keeping our culture and remembering what happened in the Bible with
Yep.
these holy days, right? But it's not the Lord's Passover. It's not the Lord's Tabernacle, Feast of First Fruits, all that stuff. Those things have to be done in the land according to Deuteronomy 16 and 16. Are we in sin for going camping in America on Tabernacles time? No, bro. We're just keeping the memorials of the things that our ancestors did, man. Right?
And questions like that pop up. Like I'm saying, the brother who brought it up to us, like when we're like, well, what about the Feast of Weeks? I'm like, bro, I don't have no farm. I don't have no land that I grow crops on. It's like, well, we can go buy some. That's not what the scripture says to do.
That's not
you know what I mean.
That's not what
it says to
that's
do.
not what Torah says to do, right? So
Supposed to leave our fruits on the ground and let it come through.
all different types of stuff, bro. So we haven't been keeping these things for almost 2,000 years now, right? And the next time we're able to properly keep those things will be when Christ and Mashiach comes, right? Builds a third temple. Does that mean that we should not be doing these things and commemorating these things? No, we're still going to congregate, get together, remember what our ancestors and our forefathers went through, and keep our culture, man. Right? This is our culture. We in the world full of Easter egg hunts and unwrapping Christmas things. I want to get together on the day of the Passover and eat some lamb with my family and my friends, man. Right? And if you deem me evil as that, right? Show me in the law where it says I can't keep a memorial of these holidays outside of the land, man. Right? And it's not a sacrifice, so we didn't sacrifice it. Right? Not a sacrifice or a holy thing. So the brother,
the sister,
the sister Eliana, right? Shalom says Khan, not official Passover, but Judges 5 and 11, they that delivered from the noise of the archers of the places of the drawing water, there they shall rehearse the righteous acts of the Lord, right? So with tabernacles as well, right? I'm literally, you have to go to the place of the land of the Lord and appear before the Lord in Jerusalem yearly to keep tabernacles there, right? And then guess what? It didn't even say your wife and your children. Well, it says all males have to in Deuteronomy 16 and 16, right? So y'all was over there forcing your wife to go to tabernacles, right? But it says all the males have to appear. It's not women that have to appear. Deuteronomy 16 and 16 says the males have to appear there. So if you go camping, right, with your wife and your family and your kids, right, for 7 days, right, you're technically, right, you're not breaking the law, right? Because these are the things that apply while we're in the land. Go ahead.
This is Tobit 1 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
For I alone went often to Jerusalem at the feast, as it was ordained unto all the people of Israel by an everlasting decree, having the first fruits and tenths of increase, with that which was the first shorn, and them gave I at the altar to the priests, the children of Aaron. The first 10th part of all increase I gave to the sons of Aaron, who ministered at Jerusalem. Another 10th part I sold away and went and spent it every year at Jerusalem.
Right. So they had to. You had at that point in Tobit, they'd have to go to Jerusalem to keep the these feasts, man, like Pentecost, Tabernacle, Passover, right? So that was the recap, man. Right? We were able to sacrifice, keep Passover everywhere we went after Exodus when we built the Ark of the Covenant, right? Because we had the altar. We kept the Passover in Gilgad because we had the Ark of the Covenant, right? After that, the name of the Lord was first placed in Shiloh. It was there for hundreds of years until Shiloh got put away from the Most High, and it got transferred to the temple, right? The temple got knocked down, and it got rebuilt up again. That's where the name of the Lord stayed at, right? In Jerusalem at the temple. The next temple, the third temple, under a Christ Hamashiach, right? Yahushua, it's going to be built there again, right? In Jerusalem, and that's going to be the next official Lord's Passover, right? From 2,000 years ago to when Christ comes back, all this that we're doing is not the Lord's Passover, right? We're not breaking the law by keeping the Lord's Passover here in America because this isn't the Lord's Passover, man, right? What we're doing isn't even a sacrifice according to the Bible, man, right? Yeah, anything else?
I mean, I'm going to just end on a powerful note, man. Shout out to my brother tribe of Issachar from the best tribe there is in Israel. You know what I'm saying? and tune in a couple hours, 5 o'clock, we're going to be going live in Sacramento. There's a Christian convention going on right now that we're going to go and and talk to people, hopefully peacefully, right?
Lord willing, man.
And hopefully your brothers were edified in here, man. Shalom.
Shalom, family.
Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. And the Lord, whom you seek, shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant, whom you delight in. Behold, he shall come, says the Lord of hosts. But who may abide the day of his coming? And who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness.